How's everybody doing this morning? Alrighty. Come on now. This is the Blair Witch Project. Let's
realize
give it up.
Everybody's comatose, but...
Alrighty, I'm Mike. This is JC. We have Drew out in the audience. We're from the East Coast Horror Group. Let's get this panel started. First off, let's introduce Joshua Leonard. All right, second, Michael C. Williams.
Yeah. All right.
Hi, everybody.
And finally, Heather Donahue.
Check.
Alrighty, let's start off.
Hi. Happy noontime.
With a few questions. So,
Wow, thanks for coming out, everybody. Wow, that's awesome turnout. Thanks for being here. Yeah. Woo! Give it up for them again!
Woo! Atlanta!
so when in the auditioning process, did you know that they were pretty much going to, drop you off in the middle of the woods and make you film everything?
Yeah, the ad said improvisational feature film to be shot in a wooded location. That was the ad out of Backstage Magazine in New York. And get to the audition down at Astor Place, and there's hundreds of people. And just your regular cattle call, open call, non-union film audition. And then when you get in, on the wall you have a sign-in sheet, and above the sign it basically says, if you are uncomfortable camping in extreme conditions or extreme situations, then this isn't the audition for you. So some people would just...
And then I think subsequently the contracts for the movie said something to the tune of, your safety is our concern, your comfort is not.
Yeah. It says that Greg Hale was a Special Forces soldier and knew tactical training and was going to put us through some real method acting. And,
Torture.
Yeah, basically. Somewhat torture. But it all worked out, obviously.
They're still here.
Still here.
Heather agrees.
Well, since the film was so unique in the way it's shot, walk us through a typical day of shooting.
All right, fine.
Very
Dirty.
presidential.
Terrible. It's too early for that kind of humor. Basically, we would be in the tent, kind of disgusting, after a night of having like a little bit of tent shaking and things along those lines. We would wake up. I seem to. Did we use baby wipes at that time for general hygiene? I can't really remember. Something along those lines. Very minimal hygiene. And then we
hygiene.
There was really no hygiene, to be honest. Then we would.
I didn't know they made baby wipes until I had babies. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now I'm a big fan, by the way.
So we would then, there would be a little milk crate there, and there were little canisters with our initials on them. We would take them out, figure out what the scene was for the day. We weren't allowed to share those with each other. So, for example, like one day it would say, Mike gets to have the map today. Or today, Joshua is going to be in charge. So there would be this conflict already set up to begin the day with, and then we would just improvise from there. In that milk crate would also be maybe like a power bar and a banana, maybe a sandwich.
The food got less and less as the week went on. And each character's note you weren't allowed to share with the other character, which inherently created the conflict.
It's like a very extended party game.
Yeah. And we had a GPS system before, we had all this technology that we have now, that we pretty much, it was at the forefront of this. So Greg Hale, again, had these GPS systems, and they went in and scouted the woods, which was mostly Seneca Creek State Park in Maryland. So when they had brought us down there, they had already scouted out, 20 different locations where events would happen, and we wouldn't know what was coming next. After you'd program in, okay, we're at waypoint 2, the event just took place. We'd plug in waypoint 3, it would tell us hike, due west 3 kilometers. So we had a compass, look at the compass, hike due west 3 kilometers, and you knew in that area there'd be something. So let's say you would get there, and I remember I was the first one to see the stick men hanging in the trees. So then you're like, oh, that's pretty lame.
Yeah. And then he's like,
I'm going to have to make this scary. Oh my God!
oh, shit, I think this is the thing we're supposed to film. All right, let's back it up. Let's do this again.
And we tried as best as we could to really believe in the circumstances. So your mind would say, well, it's just a bunch of sticks. But in your as an actor, you have to. If it's not scary for us, it was never going to be scary for you. And we all knew that. So we all decided up front, we're going to stick with the circumstance as much as possible. We're going to stay in what we called scenario, and we should never break character. And if there were any reason that we wanted to talk about a scene, like let's say we wanted to reshoot something because one of us didn't feel good about how it went, we had a code word that would break scenario, and all 3 of us would have to say the word so that I knew that Josh heard that I wanted to break scenario. Because if I said the code word and he didn't, that meant he was still going to stay in character. So the line was getting too blurry. So we had to figure that out on our way. I don't think we came up with that situation, that word, until like probably day 2 or 3. But that was helpful. Mostly we stayed in character.
What was your safety word?
Taco.
Ooh.
Which was a really terrible idea for a safety word by day 7 when we hadn't really eaten. Fucking taco.
I'm so freaking scared and
kill
hungry. I
for
want
a taco right now.
Make a run
But
for the board.
and every once in a while, because and you guys probably all know this, but because of the way the movie was designed, there was no omniscient camera. We weren't actually interacting on a scene-to-scene basis with the guy making the film. We were filming each other, and then they were kind of out on the periphery setting up these situations. So every once in a while, the Ed and Dan, who were the directors, and Greg Hale, who was the producer, and Ben Rock, who was the production designer, who would like help make the sticks and stuff. Every once in a while, we would see somebody run by in fully camouflaged clothing with makeup on their face, completely camoed out, and we would just have to pretend like we didn't see them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we just stayed. But the way that they designed the film allowed us to as close as possible approximate that situation, as though we were these 3 kids kind of lost alone in the woods.
And they would take this footage that they'd shot. So in these milk crates too, at the end of day 2, you take everything you shot on day 2, throw it in the milk crate in a container, take out the fresh batteries that they had planted there an hour before you even got there. They were always in the woods shadowing us. They would take that footage, go home, and watch that footage all night. And by the morning, they'd have dropped notes because we were creating there were some things that they could set up, but how we were reacting to them, they would guide us through these notes, but we kind of guided them so that they could see from our performances. You'd have notes like, all right, I see that the dynamic between Josh and Heather is they're constantly arguing, let's say. Well, today we need to lessen that because we watched the footage.
I think originally, in the very first incarnation of the treatment before we went out, that Mike was supposed to die first.
Yeah, I was supposed to get out.
And we were supposed to have a love interest of some sort. And by day 1,
it was clear that
by day 1 they were like, okay, no love interest. And by day 6 they were like,
we need to pull him out of there.
we need to get Josh out first because Josh and I were sick of watching footage of Josh and Heather fight. 15 years later, we made up.
I mean, they really could not have picked 3 more different people. I think that was a part of the plan that definitely worked out really well. I think picking 3 entirely different temperaments.
Yeah.
Yeah. There always was a love interest, Josh. Seriously. No, actually, I woke up that morning and I thought it was a last-minute decision. I was going to be taken out. I pretty much knew I was going to be taken out. And then I woke up and Josh was gone. And I was like, sweet! I'm still here! And you went to shoot a Jane's Addiction concert in New York.
That's true.
I remember that.
That's true. And yeah, and in the meantime, the second I got, you know, because when you go into a film, you're like, I want to do everything, and I want to, like, I'm gonna act, and I'm gonna, like, do this. And by day 6 in the woods, I was like, get me the fuck out of here, man. And so when I got that note in the film canister that said, you know, when you go to bed tonight, wait for Mike and Heather to fall asleep, and then get out of the tent. And if anybody questions you, just say, you know, you're going to take a leak. So as soon as I got that note, I was like, dude, I'm gonna get to eat Denny's tonight. I'm gonna get to go back to New York tomorrow. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
And, you know, we've never really talked about that, but it's interesting to note that I'm just thinking now, I had absolutely no idea that he had gotten out of that tent. We were literally exhausted. They had us hiking miles and miles, and we each had carried our own gear. I mean, some of that, the DAT that I had was probably, 40 pounds back then. It was an old DAT machine. And, the cameras were heavy and all of our equipment in the tent. And so the fact that I actually did not wake up. I woke up in the morning and he was gone. Which, if you think about it, if you're camping, you know how small that tent was. You think you would feel every movement, every motion, but by that time, we were so exhausted. I don't know, Heather, if you woke up when he woke up, but I don't remember it. I know for a fact I slept right through the night, woke up, and he was gone. So it even made it really, really cool. And the fact that we were that exhausted.
Just curious, was there any overly conditions out in the woods that you really, really had to work through that were
Who's asking
especially
a question? We
unpleasant?
can't figure it out.
Sorry.
Say that again?
Any overly unpleasant conditions you guys had to work through while you were shooting?
Overly unpleasant conditions?
Yes.
You want to answer? You have an answer?
It rained a lot.
It rained a lot. It was like a camping trip where it occasionally rained a lot. But when it did start to rain terribly, we did actually bail for a moment and go to somebody's house who gave us hot cocoa, which was extremely delicious. And then we called the directors and we're like, you need to come pick us up. So we were at these people's houses and we did actually spend a night out of the woods before they then dropped us back in. And after a while, they did start putting up our tent for us. We're like, look, verisimilitude is awesome and all, but we're tired and we're really doing a lot of the legwork here. So would you mind just having that tent set up for us? We don't want to carry that anymore. So they were very amenable to that.
Yeah, they actually did. I think they actually had always set up the tent, and it was because what happened was day 2, it just torrential rain all day long. That's the day where you can see I'm wearing a yellow rain jacket. We're all got a rain gear, and we get to where they would set the tent up for us, and the last thing of the day, the last waypoint we ever had was where the tent was set up. So when we got to the tent, these guys were like, we gotta bail, and the directors had said to us, there's a word that we're always gonna have a walkie-talkie, because God forbid somebody breaks their leg or something, you guys need to get out of those woods fast. The word is bulldozer. You go over the walkie-talkie. That's the only time you ever should use this walkie. You just pop in there and say bulldozer, and we'll be there within 10 minutes. Okay, cool. So these guys are like, we should bulldozer. I'm like, nah, just a little rain. I don't want this film to end, because they had said, if you leave the woods, it's probably done deal. The film can't get made. So I'm trying to talk them out of this. No, we can't. Come on, we're down here. This is our first gig as actors. We can't. And the rain was really bad. So anyway, when we got to the tent, they had set it up probably hours before. There was about 4 inches of rain in the bottom of the tent. So there was no way to sleep in this tent. So they're like, Mike, I hate to break it to you, dude, but there's nowhere to sleep. We're soaking wet. It's not working out. We got to bulldozer this situation. So I'm like, I disagree. I totally disagree. Now, in the back of your mind, you've met these guys for 2 days. They're trying to basically create a snuff film. You trust them, but you still don't really know them, right? This is what's going on in my head. So I say, fine, whatever you guys want to do, fine, that's fine. And I remember being pissed off, this is going to end this film. So Josh grabs the walkie, bulldozer. I'm like, nothing's happening here, right? Bulldozer. Nothing. Now I'm like, these guys are actually going to kill us. This is actually going to happen. This is crazy. Bulldozer. Next thing you know, I'm literally, bulldozer! So if the rain slowed us up, we found out, if the rain had slowed us up so much, it actually slowed them down so much that they weren't even catching up to us. They were too busy with, like, you know, soaking wet equipment and batteries and whatever they were doing. So they were just nowhere in range of this walkie-talkie, which would have been the first and last time they weren't. So as Heather said, we had to, like, just find our way out of the woods. And we came across a house in the middle of nowhere. And we looked like shit, of course. So Josh and I are like...
The three of us stood outside and we were like, Heather, you should go knock on the door first. Girls are inherently less scary than guys are when they show up at your house in the middle of the woods at night.
It was probably 11 o'clock at night.
And so she did, and she made the introduction, and these sweet, trusting people invited us into their house and made us hot cocoa, and then the directors came and picked us up, and we got to. I think we were instructed not to shower that night.
Yeah, we couldn't shower,
but we could dry out at least.
Yep.
And then the next day we went back out to the woods and did it all over again.
We watched the World Series. I remember that. We slept. We got up and we went back to the woods.
But that was part of part of the improv nature, because we get asked the question a lot. You know, were you really scared when you made the film? Yeah, that's better. We get asked the question a lot. You know, were you really scared when you were making the film? And I think part of it. Part of it's that we were shooting in a state park, so it wasn't as deep in the middle of the woods as we tried to act it out to be. But the other side was there was so much physical exertion that went into carrying those cameras around, getting from spot to spot, and then often like the scene where the kids are laughing outside the tent and the tent is getting shook. Which even when I watched the movie, like that's scary shit. But the reality of doing that is you've hiked all day, you're really exhausted, you've gotten into your tent, which is wet, you've got an inch or two of water in the bottom of your sleeping bag. You're like, okay, fuck it, I just have to fall asleep. You kind of get in your sleeping bag, it's freezing. The water finally gets up to body temperature so you can kind of fall asleep in this wet sleeping bag, and then the tent starts shaking, and you know it's these dudes outside. You're like, oh man. Okay, life of an actor, let's go. Ah! So whereas I think, I mean, we really tried to act and put ourselves in the situation where it could be scary. So often it was just so grueling that I think that disguised itself as fear in our performances.
So, being a part of this film, what, in your opinions, being the actors in it, made it such a huge success?
Say that one more time?
In your opinions, being the actors in the film, what made it such a huge success to the horror community?
Perfect storm of the internet just hitting the scene. If you think about 1997, we shot it. By 98, we were all figuring out, maybe 2 years into this whole new World Wide Web, and basically what you read, you believed. And John Pearson put a segment of Blair Witch on Split Screen, which was an IFC show. John and Janet Pearson. John is a famous indie guy who put on this little segment and said, do you think this is real or not? Go to blairwitch.com. So, if somebody had done that now, think about it, you'd be like, no, it's not real. It's just some crappy thing that they put together. But at that point, home video cameras were really more accessible for the first time. They weren't these huge things. So it was, to me, a perfect storm of the media at where the internet was in its infancy, and home video camera, you could relate to us because it was the first time you were seeing something on the big screen that you usually would watch on your TV with your own friends and family in these videos. We didn't really have that. Now we're saturated by it.
And reality television. It was the inception of reality television.
Yeah, none of that had been around yet. So I think, we'll take some credit because we made it believable because we believed in the circumstances and we did our job. The directors and producers, took 3 years to really, before we even set foot in Maryland, they would work on this thing for 3 years. And what exactly do we want to do with this? In fact, our found footage was only supposed to be 10 to 20 minutes of the film, and the rest of the film was interviews, which they actually shot. And the more they watched our found footage, the more they would call and say, hey, we watched some more of this, and we've cut together the film, and you guys are in it for 20 minutes, but now we're gonna actually have it half and half, where you guys are in it for 45 and the interviews are 45. And then 2 weeks later they'd call and say, actually, you guys are going to be in more of that, we're going to have less interviews, and eventually it became only the found footage. So the metamorphosis of this thing was over the course of probably 4 years. So it had to do with their creativity and their use of the infancy of where web media was, I think.
As we're all horror fans here. What does it mean to each of you to be in a modern horror classic?
Who wants to pick up that loaded gun? I think so much of what Mike says holds true for me as well, which is just, look, I equate it to, like some of those bands, the early 80s punk bands, like the Germs or something, who just kind of got together and put a mic in the middle of the room and recorded something, and then, all of a sudden, 15 years later, somebody decided it was great. Like, it doesn't, it was such a punk rock spirit that we were doing it in the sense that there was a lot of thought and passion that went into it, but not a lot of skill or expertise. And so I think there was a real purity to it because none of us really knew what the hell we were doing. And so in terms of, you get asked those loaded questions. What does it feel like to, have revolutionized cinema and kind of sent it in this more verite direction? And I think that part of it, I don't know that any of us can take any credit for it because it was all completely inadvertent. We were just making a film with the resources we had, doing it the way that we knew how to do it. Everything else, the cultural response to it was completely out of our hands. And so it's cool, but it's weird, and obviously, we've all worked to some extent since then, and it's something that you can never repeat. But fun, and fun to do with something that was never done for the wrong reasons. I think people go out and try to do things so they will get, famous, and this was really just an experiment. It was just this weird little thing that we went out to see that, if we could do it or not, and it really caught on. So I think that was kind of badass.
Yeah, I don't know. It's strange to be in so many people's brains. Like, that's the thing that I find the oddest. Like, when you're just out and about and people are like, oh, where do I know you from? I'm like, I don't know, where'd you go to high school? Like, there's this thing where you're just inside people's heads and they don't know exactly where, and you do, and it's always this sort of weird imbalanced conversation. So I think that comes from not just being part of like a horror classic, which is the weirdest word to say, horror. It's like rural.
Horror.
The rural juror. Yeah. So it's not so much about being in a horror classic as it is about being in something that just hit so many eyeballs and went through those eyeballs into people's brains. Like that. Sometimes when I think about that, it's just bizarre to me. Like, but it's also comforting to kind of like, I feel it's always nice to meet people who have liked it and connect with them. It's weird.
I fucking love it. I really do. Always have. I mean, it's a great experience, and meeting all of you guys. You know, this is our second time we've been together, and it's cool to hang out with them for a weekend. It's really cool to hang out with you guys for a weekend, and you know, I probably drank beer with a lot of you last night. You know, like it just, it's cool that you guys think it's awesome. It was an awesome thing to be a part of from the inception of it through Sundance, which you're at Sundance, you're like, this is the greatest. I'm at Sundance. This is amazing. I can't believe it. And then you figure that's the end of the road, and then all of a sudden you find yourself doing the talk show circuit. You're like, wow, I'm sitting next to Jay Leno. His forehead really is big, or his chin is really, this guy is real, and that's awesome. So you're having fun with that. Then I got this dude over here comes up to me yesterday. He's got a freaking tattoo of Stickman, and he's happy to meet me, and I'm like, dude, I'm happy to meet you, like that's Ken right there, right? That's a crazy tattoo. You got to see it, but like. I love it. I really thoroughly enjoy it. And now that I have some space and distance between the craziness, I fucking love it. I love being here. So thanks. Yeah, it's awesome.
And Mike is now a high school guidance counselor. Middle school guidance counselor, excuse me. Which, yes, first of all, how badass a career is that? But how amazing would it be if you were in middle school and your guidance counselor was one of the guys from the Blair Witch? That's just so cool.
They get a kick out of it. They really do.
Well, I did want to check with you guys. I mean, obviously, whenever you're waiting for the movie to come out and you had to wait and kind of lay low, not let anybody know, because it was sort of like a found footage film, obviously. Once it came out, did you go to the movie theater at all and like check out crowd reactions?
I was in rehab while they were editing it, so that took me out of the circuit a little bit. But then after Sundance, and when we realized it was something that was going to catch on, they kept us hidden. And I remember we were in New York City. They were playing it at the Angelica Cinema, and we all went and kind of hid across the street from the movie theater and watched the lines form and kind of the craziness happen. But we weren't allowed to put our faces out there yet.
And he says that. I just, I don't know if I'm getting too personal, but he's been sober for years, and God bless him, he's done a great job. I think about where we were in our lives, and I'm always so proud to have him as a friend and to watch him go through what.
Not when we made the film.
No,
definitely.
It would have not been as much fun. I went to my hometown movie theater because my father-in-law, who passed away now, but he was a great dude, and he said he didn't care about the hype or anything. He says, when it's at the Hawthorne Multiplex, that means you made it. When it's at the Hawthorne Multiplex, that means you made it. So I came in one day, is that the fucking Hawthorne Multiplex? Let's go! So we watched it together, and there were these two big, monstrous dudes in front of us. And we watched the whole movie, and I'm just sitting there waiting for the crowd reaction. True story. Like, this is awesome. This is my hometown. This is great. I used to try and pick up girls in high school at this movie theater, unsuccessfully. But so there are these two big dudes in front of us. I'll never forget. One guy gets up. Man, that was bullshit. Fuck this. I want my money back. He was so pissed off, and I was like, holy shit. True story. It was crazy. He was so pissed off. People would come up to you on the street and be like, you're in that movie, right? You're like, yeah, that movie sucks. Like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, there'd be people like, oh, you're alive? You suck. Like they hated you for being alive, and I'm like, people, it's not my fault.
That is the flip side of being recognizable in that way. Is that people really feel like they can come up and just tell you how bad you are.
Yeah, exactly. I want my money back right now. I was like, I don't really have it on me. Like.
and other people really like it. I did another funny anecdote from that time was Ed Sanchez, whose whole family lived in Florida. He has a Cuban American family, and they were in southern Florida at the time. And the movie, I mean, and this was really when it had gotten crazier than any of us could have expected. And we had one week where the directors were on the cover of Time magazine. We as actors were on the cover of Newsweek. We were doing the talk show circuit. And and Ed just couldn't get his mother, his Cuban-American mother, to realize that it was kind of a big deal. She was kind of like, Eddie, you still got to come up with a backup plan in case this whole thing doesn't work. And then all of a sudden, after Newsweek, after Leno, after all that, he wound up on the cover of the South Floridian Cuban-American Times with a circulation of maybe 300. And she called him just weeping. She was like, you made it. You're famous. because that was what hit close to home for her. Any questions from the audience? Is that what we're doing, or are we wrapping it up?
We're getting there real quick.
We're going to get 2 more.
Okay, 2 more questions, and then we'll send it over to the audience. Go ahead, Drew.
Just kind of a deleted scenes question. You guys remember filming anything? It says the original cut's supposed to be about 2.5 hours.
Speak up.
Original cut was supposed to be about 2.5 hours. Kind of a deleted scenes question. Do you guys remember anything, especially while filming, that didn't make it into the final cut?
Yeah, we were talking last night. There's a whole, after the first night in the hotel, we were doing shots and eating Utz pretzels or whatever we were eating. We went to a diner across the street and we shot all that, and they argued a lot. And that's gone, and I don't know that Heather even remembers it. I remember it vividly. I remember the diner and everything. I don't know if you remember that diner. We were talking about it last night, Josh. And there was a scene after we find Josh's teeth and hair in that little bundle where I completely have a nervous breakdown and meltdown, and I'm starting to punch trees, and I'm just screaming and crying, and I'm just like, all right, I'm giving it everything. I'm just letting everything go, just so they have this, big, huge pinnacle of this performance and this craziness. And it was really fun to do because it was pretty intense. And I thought it was that's the best work I've ever done. I'm so psyched. That's definitely getting in. And they cut it because if I had melted down that much on that day, there would be nowhere for me to go. So they were like, we just couldn't let you fall apart that much because there's no coming back. While it was a great performance, there's no coming back from that. So I still, I don't think actually I've ever seen it, so they can tell me it was good. It might have been awful. I don't know. Probably was. Pretty self-indulgent, but so that's something I always wonder about.
I would just love to see some of that stuff, actually. Because it is improvised and because it became such a thing, I'm curious to see. And because also I realized that nobody really changes ever. And I think you can only really tell that when you don't see people for a long time and then you see them again and you're like, oh my God, we're all exactly the same as we were at 24. Really, hardly at all. So I'd be curious to see us interacting back then, and just to see that diner scene and see the fun parts of the movie. I think that's one thing that kind of gets lost in it. It's kind of funny. Those earlier scenes are funny, and I think people forget about that part of it.
True.
All right, we're going to open up to questions from the audience.
How's it going, guys? Really just a great film, very methodical, a great build-up. My question actually is for Heather. The final 5 minutes of the movie, it's a build-up to the last 5 minutes, and the last 5 minutes are very simple. They're very scary, with very simple techniques. Talk about going through that, and Josh and Michael also, you might want to comment. What was it like seeing that with such a scary ending to the film?
Well, I think seeing it, I kind of had a similar moment to Mike did after I did my confessional scene. I was like, I wanted to give myself a high five. I was like, yeah, what? Snot and all, take that method, bitches, what? Because I was trained in to really go for it, part of my acting training. So I was like, yeah, that's right, no mascara here. I was so excited about that part that by the time we kind of got into the house, it really was straightforward, and it was so great. There was partly the anticipation of this relief that we were almost done, and you could take a shower, and I wouldn't have to be wearing those dirty jeans anymore, or those crusty socks. And so it gave us that extra bit of freedom, I think, to really just go for it. Do you know what I mean? Like those screams when I'm in the house are like screams of like freedom deferred. It's like it's about to happen. It's almost done. And so it was great. But by the time I got down to the basement and saw Mike in the corner, I mean, by the time Greg Hale like grabbed me and pulled the camera down, I was like hyperventilating. I was like so ready to go. And then we got out of the woods and it was Halloween. Yeah. So we go to Denny's and there's like cats and witches and pirates. And it's our first meal in 10 days. And we're just like, it just added this extra level of surreality to the whole thing. So seeing it is just, I think it's anytime you work on something, when I watch anything that I've been in, I think more about what those moments were like how that day was, rather than actually being able to see the story at that point, you know, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Oh, I know. I still remember. I can transport myself right back to that. After that confessional, which I didn't see, I just waited for her to do that. I knew what she was doing. The whole energy changed, and I can actually, like, sitting here, I'm reflecting. I can sense that energy. It was like a switch, and it was such an amazing thing to be a part of. Because after Greg Hale he grabbed me, I literally started weeping. Like, I just started weeping, and he's like, "Not yet, man, not yet. Go in the corner. Go in the corner. Go in the corner." I don't want to go in the corner. Right? And then when they took Heather, I mean, I think we did. We just like, oh my God, what a release! But that between the confessional and standing and right after standing in the corner, that like 30 minutes of my life was this surreal snap change of energy that was like I wish I could put it to words, but it was very, very, I could feel it, you know. It was really powerful.
It was so nice to finish. It really was.
Yeah. I don't think I even realized that there was that short a period of time between the confessional and the ending of the movie. Yeah. In the way that you guys were shooting it, because I was out of there already.
It was literally like she did it and she came and it was like this whole, it wasn't like, oh, this and that. No, it was like, okay, I'm ready. You ready? Let's go. Right? I mean, we barely said 3 words to each other, and then here we go. Now we're walking through the woods, see this house. It was awesome.
And then Artisan bought the film at Sundance and decided that they loved the whole thing, except they wanted a new ending to it.
Yes.
And so you guys went out into the woods with probably 3 times as much money as we'd made the entire movie for.
True story.
And shot 3 alternate endings.
One which I was hanging on a stickman crucifix with blood dripping down, and fucking Hollywood, right?
And they spent all that money and then came back and realized they all sucked and the first ending was the best anyway, and then put that one back in.
I made more money in the 2 days I went to reshoot. I probably made 4 times the amount of money I made to shoot the whole thing.
Thank you very much.
And we got another question out there?
Yeah, one right here. I had a question for you guys. When you realized that you got the part and you went out in the woods and it was kind of all like ad-libbing, did you have any idea of the story, like the Rustin Parr or Coffin Rock or Ellie Kepler's? Did you have a basic idea of what the supposed legacy of Burkittsville was? Or was that just completely ad-lib? Like when you read the Coffin Rock book, was that the first time you had read it, or did you have a general idea?
No, because for my character, the background for my character, I had to be sort of obsessed with this story. So they gave me tons of material. We even had a flyer for like the zucchini festival of the town. Like they really went to the finest detail to kind of present this very full story. So they gave me extra other backup materials. I had all kinds of stuff about Rustin Parr, all kinds of stuff about Ellie Kedward, because I also had to write the introduction that we shot in the cemetery. Like they wanted us to do all of that stuff to make it as real as possible. So yeah, I was very well versed in their mythology by the time we got to set.
Yeah, perfect setup, because we didn't know anything. We were just like, we're supposed to be these kids that Heather goes to school with and says, I want to do this thing, come to the woods with me this weekend. It's like, all right, whatever, no problem. But I don't know anything about this stuff, so it really fed into the whole thing where she really was versed in what all this stuff meant. So if you look at her eyes in some of those moments throughout the scene where rocks or sticks are hanging, like she knows what they represent. The whole Mary Brown thing, like she knows what is going on. We have no idea. We're just like, this is weird. But her performance, like I know we talk about how good it is and how great that ending scene was, but the through line of her to continue to want to film, that's so hard to do, to be that obsessed with filming and make it realistic. So that I always am like amazed that you were able to do that and people never really questioned it. And then, but in her eyes, she knows that backstory. So it adds to the tension because there's something going on with Heather. What is it about her that we as the audience don't know? And it's all this stuff that she knows that Josh and I never did.
Big basket of crazy. That's what it is.
All right, we have time for 2 more questions.
In the sequel, they took some shots at you guys a little bit. Did you guys ever see that? And what did you feel? How did you feel about that? Or was it just like good-natured ribbing or anything like that?
Did you ask?
In the Blair Witch sequel, which was awful, they took some of the characters took some shots at you guys from the first movie.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about that, or was it just like, oh, it's just good-natured, fun kind of thing?
Well, I mean, you could.
I didn't even. I did see it. I don't even really remember. They basically poking fun at us, taking shots at us. Yeah, I think it was fine. No big deal.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the thing about the second movie is it. In spirit and intention, it could not have been more different than the first movie, and I think that's what people responded to. Is you know, at that point they'd made a lot of money on the distributor had made a lot of money on the first one, and they were trying to milk it for the second one, and it was exactly, there was none of that spirit of like, let's go out and try something new. It was, you know, it was a much more traditional, like, let's try to make money where we see there's money, and you know, I don't think anything good ever really comes out of that.
All right, final question.
It is weird though when it is your real name, and then all of a sudden your real name becomes like somebody else's character, and you're told that's actually not your name anymore. That's our character's name. Copyright Artisan. And so I mean, I certainly had a real problem with that because I feel like there was a lot of backlash directed at me. So when I heard about that, that definitely pissed me off.
All right. Hi. So I just watched your film 3 days ago, and I can't keep my closet door open anymore. So good job on that.
Thanks.
But my question is, as that had an effect on me, did that have an effect on y'all after the film that you couldn't do things or things became a little bit more scary? Because she showed me it, and I am very mad that she showed me that film. It's hard for me to go in my closet.
No, I stand in corners at least once a day.
Okay. I mean,
no, it didn't really affect, like if I watch Jaws, I'm not crazy about going into the ocean to go swimming, so I can get it with the camping, but because we did it, you know, while I think it's a scary film, when I watch it I thought it had a scary effect because the mind games that it's playing, but it never really affected my sort of love for the outdoors or going camping and stuff. I do that all the time, so.
Yeah, plenty of friends who I grew up around in Pennsylvania, though, who kind of like live in the middle of the woods, who were not terribly happy with me after the film came out.
Heather?
I live in the woods, so now. Yeah, I didn't before. I lived in a big city. Now I live in the woods, so it had a positive effect ultimately on my life.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to thank Mike, Heather, and Josh for coming out again today. Please give them a big round of applause. And I want to thank everyone here for coming out to Days of the Dead Atlanta. We couldn't have had a better time with you guys. You were so great. And honestly, you're why we put it on. You know, you are the fans. You're what drives not only the cons, but the horror industry itself. You know, you're the ones that come out to the theater. You're the ones that buy the DVDs and the Blu-rays and the video games and the books and sometimes pornography. But I do want to thank you all again for coming out this weekend. Give yourselves a round of applause. Appreciate yourselves more than that. And one more big round of applause for the cast of the Blair Witch Project.
Don't forget to come up and get your free poster for the Evil Dead remake.
And can we get everybody to stand up real quick for a group photo?